Hello there.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Ryan. Are you somewhere fun?
I am currently in Skagway, Alaska.
Okay.
And it is beautiful.
Nope, not on mine. Assembly works. I hit it before. This is the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly Work Session. I'll call to order. We are in the Assembly Chambers on Thursday, August 31st, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. First item is citizens' comments. Anybody wishing to come forward or call in, please do so. The call-in numbers are 1-907-486-3231, and the toll-free number is 1-855-492-9202.
Hello, my name is Dan Rohr. Let me just print it here. Two things that I wanted to just briefly comment on. The first one very, very briefly, but because for a future time, but thinking specifically back to the rocket launch facility again, and this ongoing challenge where their board has adopted a master plan that we worked in conjunction with them for, 18 months, 2 years. And then you have new staff come along that just ignores that. So at some point, I appreciate that DNR and you guys supported pushing the deadline for response on their latest deal. But since we have till October, we've got a little time. But I think at some point, having the Borough Assembly pen another letter, and I know you guys have done that before, but just kind of, again, expressing community concern over where they're headed. The thing, though, that is on your agenda tonight that I really wanted to comment on, comes up periodically. It's the whole property tax issue with senior tax exemptions and disabled vets. And when it comes up, it's always hard because you got to vote on should somebody get an exemption or should they not get an exemption when they've missed the filing deadline. So I want to speak just specifically to that. The two things I'm mostly concerned about there in section D1, basically in regards to appeals. As you look at it, I would encourage you to not allow a look-back period. Allow people only to appeal the current year you're in. As soon as you open up previous years, it gets very, very expensive. And then I think the other big thing to remember is we've already allocated all of those dollars that we've collected either to service districts or the city of Kodiak or to the Kodiak Island Borough School District. So any look-back period that you agreed to allow somebody to tax exemption in a previous year, you would have to fund 100% of that out of the general fund budget of the borough, and I think that's just unfair to the rest of the borough citizens. The other thing that I struggle with is, should people be approved for multiple years or just 1 year? And I don't know that I have the answer to that. I've in the past been opposed to why can't we just apply once and be done with it? People don't get younger. But then the other thing is people move and circumstances change and people aren't always forthright about that. You could do a multi-year thing. The only thing that concerns me with multi-year is a number of years ago, the state of Alaska, for those of us that have corporations, we do a biannual report. And the problem with the biannual report was they didn't send out notices. So that you got it for 2 years, but then all of a sudden when you looked up corporations, like hundreds of corporations across the state were all out of compliance. And the reason being was because with a multi-year thing, it's sometimes easier to remember to do something once a year rather than to do it every 5 years or 6 years or whatever. So I don't know the answer to that one. My biggest concern is a look-back period, that we be careful about that. And then I feel like there was one other thing. I think that was actually it. And as long as we continue to notice people too, I think sending a letter to people, it's kind of like if you don't receive a bill in the mail, it's easy to forget to pay it. So receiving notice like the borough currently does where we send it out to remind people to file, I think is important. So I think that was it. I feel like there was one other thing, but anyways, I'm looking forward to hearing your discussion tonight on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else wishing to come forward, please do. Any calls? Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Seema Karut, and I'm your assessor. Period. And that's all I have to say.
Are you happy? Thank you, Seema. Anyone else wishing to come forward? Oh, boy.
Hello, my name is Amy Williams. I'm the Borough Manager, and I'd like to take time to introduce our new Community Development Director. Chris French is here. Chris started work on August 21st. This is what he looks like, so you guys can recognize him in a lineup later of directors. welcome Chris. Chris came from Kentucky with his wife Tara. They are all moved in, but their household goods are not here yet. Chris, do you want to, you don't have to, do you want to say anything? I'm like, I just told your life story.
I just wanted to say that I'm happy to be here and get
Tomorrow, Friday, September 1st, and will not reopen until Tuesday, September 5th, due to an electrical outage tomorrow and then the holiday on Monday. So don't come into the offices until Tuesday. Thanks.
Go ahead, Dan.
I had 14 seconds left. Good cause. I think it's important to make sure we maintain a definition for good cause. If we don't define it, it gives you liberty when you have a specific rule you're looking at. If we don't define good cause, then every assembly will decide differently potentially on it, and I think that risks a lawsuit. Thanks.
Yeah. Dan, I'm hoping you're going to stick around, because if you have something, raise your hand and consider. Dave.
Yes, good evening. Dave Conrad, Director of Engineering and Facilities. Want to remind the public that with the closure tomorrow, the landfill is closed to the public. However, it'll be open for normal business on Saturday. We will not be able to take credit cards because of our electrical outage. So if you come out there, please have a check or cash. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else wishing to come forward for a public announcement?
So, feeling a little left out. So I'm going to say, it's winter, it's getting darker, and if the police can't, and the health people, the ambulances can't find you, they can't help you. So I'm going to channel Chief Rue here and say, call fire departments, get your houses identified with numbers. Not all of our streets are straight. Not all of them turn at 90-degree angles. So it's easier if your house numbers are out where the help people can find you. Thanks.
Howard Rue would be proud of you, Dora. Thank you. Anyone else? No calls? Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to agenda items. The first one is discuss Department of Motor Vehicle taxes on there. Amy?
This did not get attached to the agenda item, so in the manager's report, there are several sheets that include the two ordinances, one from fiscal year 19, one from fiscal year 20, and then the chart of accounts. You can see the money as it has come in over time, so you can see what has come in. There are two things that I was asked about on this. One, that the borough considers lowering that down back to its original rate, and two, that we consider the permanent date on that. If you live in a borough that has enacted an ordinance allowing permanent registration, it automatically shows up at the DMV, and then if your vehicle is older than 8 years, you don't have to redo it every year. Or there are, like the municipality of Anchorage just does trailers, so there's options on doing trailers and vehicles, or one or the other. So I was asked to bring that up. We decided that we were going to have an allocation of some of that money going towards removing junk vehicles, and then some of it towards bond debt. And then in 21, that is when we decide to raise it. So those ordinances are in there for your review and your consideration. Thanks.
Okay. I'll add that the state of Alaska has what we call a P-tab, permanent tab for seniors when you hit a certain age. I don't remember if it's 60 or 65. Do you remember, Scott? No. Yeah, it's one of the two. You no longer pay either the borough or the state motor vehicle department fees on there. So there's already one there, and it doesn't matter what the age of the vehicle is. It depends upon what your age is. So that's a major deal there. Scott, you got a comment?
Is there a way to roll in mobile homes into this? We had a big problem when they cleaned out the mobile home thing down on Spruce Cape. And if we find a way to register them and keep track of who owns them, that would, I think, help us in the long run. Is there a way to do that with this trailer thing? Can you look into that, I guess is my question.
I absolutely can look into it. I don't have that
Yeah.
answer. This
This-
permanent registration is specifically for like private
behind.
vehicles, not commercial,
Yeah.
and for just like trailers, like you want to haul your ATV trailer, not so much live-in trailers.
Yeah, my understanding is about 20 years ago, the state changed the registration, took mobile homes off of the
Well,
vehicle registration.
what the state did and what Kodiak Island Borough does are two separate things. And we're an island, and if they accumulate here, you know, we ought to be able to deal with them. And we weren't able to deal with them when they cleaned up the other one, so.
We'd have to ask SEMA, but as I remember it, they've gone off the mobile home park owners to gather information. SEMA?
So we do require when somebody sells their mobile home, they'll come in, and typically we only catch it when somebody doesn't want to pay their taxes because they don't own that mobile home anymore. We also do ask the park owners to let us know about addresses and people that live or own the mobile homes, but it's not always easy for them. If they're getting their park rent and it's from somebody else than owns it, they are just only concerned about getting their park rent.
Well, it was a big pain in the caboose when the last time this came up. So maybe there's ways that we can try to work with people to make the record more complete.
It still is a pain, so I agree.
Yeah.
We can look into it for sure, though.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Anything else?
Nope.
You got there? Okay, couple of the things that I'm going to say is, when people complain, they basically, on a vehicle, for a new vehicle, on the first 2 years, it is $300 for the borough tax, but it's $100 for the state tax for the 2 years. So it's $400 for 2 years. That's $200 a year, but only $150 of it is the borough's. And what it is it's a personal property tax, is what it is. So that's saying a new vehicle is worth about $12,000, $13,000 on there when you take the mill rate against it. And we all know that's not the case. So it's still a very good deal on it. And I'm not in favor of lowering it. The trailer, non-commercial trailers are $40 for 2 years. That's $20 a year. I don't feel that's excessive. And I'm not in favor of, after 8 years, saying, okay, you don't pay anymore. Because we tend to get these vehicles well after that. And from time to time, we use the money for towing and disposal. So, and the other thing is it was designed to help offset property owners through property tax paying for everything, which included, so that's why the funds from this are basically dedicated to debt service, which is going for the schools, to the tune of almost $800,000 a year, basically the equivalent of $500,000. So if you're going to start lowering this, you're looking at raising the mill rate to compensate for it. And I'm not interested in that at all. So I understand talking about things from time to time. The other issue here is if we were to decide in the next month or two, it doesn't take effect on January of 2024. It takes effect on January of 2025. And I see Ryan's got a little hand up there. Ryan, would you like to say something?
Yeah, Roger, thank you. In opposition for your position and with your stance of spreading it out for those non-property owners, isn't that a form of double taxation for a property owner then, who's also getting taxed again, owning property and also registering a vehicle through DMVA? I mean, that to me meets the definition of double taxation.
No, it doesn't on there. So, Seema, you have a comment?
sorry. So personal property, we do not tax them in personal property if it has a registered license. So we avoid that double taxation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ryan. Anything else?
No, I lowered my hand. I'm done getting that for the night. Stop yelling at me, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Anyway, quit making me laugh, then I have to cough. So basically, to give you an idea, I did check what, on the commercial, for instance, I'm going to say on commercial vehicles, you've got 0 to 5,000 pounds is $180 for 2 years is the state charge on top of our, based on age. And then at 5,000 to 12,000, it's $268 for 2 years. 12,000 to 18,000, $516. And at 18,000 and over, which is commercial tractor or dump truck, and your fuel trucks are going to fall in there too, is $662 for 2 years. And on our tax, the borough tax, on that 18,000 pound and over is $700. So basically, we're half of the cost of it. But the state rate doesn't base it on age. So after 6 years, the borough goes down to $500 and the state remains at $662 on there. And trailers, one time only on commercial is $20 on there. The charge on trailers for residential is $30 at the state level for 2 years. So you're paying, for 2 years, you're paying $30 for the state and $40 for the borough. Total of $70 for 2 years on there. Dora, I see you there. Is there something you'd like to say? Okay.
I just wanted to explain the flow and the accounting for the money. We receive money for debt service via property taxes, and we receive money for debt service via motor vehicle registrations. Both of those figures total what our debt service payments are. So if, by chance, we set a budget and say, oh, we're only going to get $700,000 worth of motor vehicle tax, and we get $800,000. So the next year, that means there's a $100,000 surplus in the account. So the next year, when we calculate the mill rate for debt service, there's already $100,000 in there, so we don't have to recollect that. So there's no buildup of money in the debt service fund. I can't have that in order to qualify as a bona fide debt service fund according to the IRS. So all those collections are going toward debt service. There's no excess being saved anywhere or used for anything else. And anything over what we budget for in collections saves taxation the next year. Vice versa, if we get less than we expect, then we'll have to increase the mill rate the following year to cover that deficit that we got the previous year. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeff?
You know, just looking at it, for me, if there's any consideration on lowering it, for me, it would be in year 8 for an 8-year-old vehicle. And that would be something I'd be willing to look at. But it's expensive. I know there are people in our community that if they have families in other communities in the state, they're starting to register their vehicles off this island because it's too much. So if I was going to look at anything, it would be on the 8-year-old vehicle.
Well, part of it is if your address on your driver's license is in Kodiak, you've got to know somebody over there and put it in their name, not yours. And if your license says you're in Kodiak, you're getting charged to Kodiak when you buy the vehicle over there. So it's not that easy. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's easy, I'm saying it's happening.
Yeah, and remember we're down to, after 8 years and over, we're down to the 140, and the state tax on $100 there. So it's 200, and $240. We're a little over half of it.
Right, and if I may,
Sure.
certainly not attempting to argue, but on an 8-year-old vehicle at $140, it's what we used to charge for a new vehicle, right? So that I think is where people that are bringing forward that this is excessive, that's where that's coming from. It's what we're charging for an 8-year-old vehicle is what we used to charge for a new vehicle. By the old table that's here, it had 140 for 2 years and then it lowered. And I'm certainly not proposing dropping what we did a couple of years ago, because I understand why we did what we did, and I voted for this. I'm only saying consideration should be granted for a vehicle that's 8 years old, perhaps. And I'm not convinced
Perhaps,
yet. That's
right.
why I'm saying perhaps.
Yeah. So, any other discussion? Larry?
Just so I understand this, so if I register a vehicle that I buy from the mayor, which I probably wouldn't do, but,
Mine are all over 20.
and I wanted to register the vehicle and it was 6 years old, what would I pay?
6 years old, you would pay the $200 plus the $100 for the state
Right.
registration.
So you register every year,
Every 2 years.
every 2 years, okay.
It's every 2 years.
The dilemma here is, of course, that a tax was passed that raises money, and that money becomes integrated into our budget. So when we try to lower a tax, it becomes very, very difficult because the tax is allocated. And, housing values have gone up, so people's tax bills have gone up. And previous assembly raised, because we needed the revenue, I'm not questioning that, but they added another, which I believe is a very regressive tax. And I generally don't support regressive taxes because it hits people who can afford it the least, the same as somebody who isn't going to give it the time of day. And to address that, then we have to decrease our revenue in the future, which could mean a mill rate increase. And so at some point in time, we're going to run out of different ways to tax people. And until we figure out a way to manage it. So I understand what it is, and I understand it generates a lot of good money. And it probably has resulted, as was said, that ultimately it leads to a lower mill rate by having another source of revenue. But it is very much a regressive addition to our revenue. And I don't support it completely at the amount that it is. But, I don't have an answer on how you would replace it
Yeah.
either.
Another tax that we raised at the same time was the cigarette tax. We went from 50 cents a pack over a period of 2 years to $3 a pack. And that was also modeled after other places, and that raises a whole lot more money than it used to, which is also offsetting taxes. And if you follow your logic, Larry, that's a very regressive tax.
Well, if I may, a cigarette tax is something that you don't have to do unless you choose to do. If you choose to do it, it's fine, but if you don't, it's not regressive in that way. But the registration tax, everybody pays regardless of your income or your ability to pay.
Only if you register a vehicle.
Well, if you buy a $300 car from somebody, you're going to have to pay $300 to register, $400, excuse me.
It would be $240.
That's
Let's
assuming
get it
it's
right.
8 years old.
Yes.
If you pay $300, go ahead, Jim.
Maybe I got a deal on that car, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we don't care whether you got a deal. We treat everybody the same on it. So it's a problem. Taxes are a problem. And it was a form of trying to spread things around a little bit. And I stand by it at this time. So with that, we'll move on to the next. You didn't have your hand up, Amy?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but so obviously you're not about lowering the motor vehicle tax, but is there any interest in the permanent trailer or Nothing.
No.
Nothing, none of those. But I have some,
Jared?
so thank you.
Got a comment?
Yeah, I think I'd, like with Jeff, interested possibly maybe in looking at the permanent registration for vehicles 8 years or over. I would want to know what the fiscal impact of that would be. Like this past year, you know, how much money was that? Or how much money was collected on vehicles over
8 years.
over 8 years?
When this first started, I tried to get information from the state to separate which vehicles and how much, and they have no interest in providing that to me whatsoever.
Yeah, they wouldn't separate it by vehicles or commercial vehicles or anything.
Wow.
We ran, because those were questions we asked to begin with the year before. So that would have been over 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago we started.
I can certainly try and ask the question again.
Maybe their computers are better now?
I
Please,
don't know that their
please
staffing's
try.
increased, but
Yeah,
I can ask. Yeah, I can ask.
look into it, please. Okay. So next item is discuss changes to the senior tax and disabled veterans tax exemption process. Great fun. Let's see, Amy, do you want to start that, or Seema, or what's your thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So SEMA has prepared a statement with numbers and impacts that she's handing out to everyone right now. And so if you want her to start by presenting her statement, we can do
I
it
think
that
so.
way, or you can have the assembly ask questions, your choice.
I think we'd have the presentation first, and then that'll. This one's yours.
Thanks for laughing.
It was a great joke.
So first, I apologize, Mr. Sherritt. I'll have to email you the paperwork that I just passed out. And.
You're going to go ahead and explain it a bit, so.
Yep.
So hopefully he'll be able to pick it up. Thanks for the thumbs up, Ryan.
I just handed out a copy of the state statute, AS 2945030. I'll direct you to the last page highlighted in yellow. Section F states in part, an exemption may not be granted under E of this section except upon written application for the exemption. It continues on to state that each municipality shall, by ordinance, establish procedures and deadlines for filing the application. The governing body of the municipality for good cause shown may waive the claimant's failure to make timely application for exemption and authorize the assessor to accept the application as timely filed. We do that. KIBC 3.35030 follows that mandate to the letter. 3.35030D says, in the event that the claimant fails to apply for a senior exemption as provided by AS 2945030E by January 15th of the assessment year for which the exemption is sought, and continues on about good cause, but in D1 it states, a waiver may only be granted for the year in which the application is filed. And I'm sorry if I'm going to repeat some of the things that former Mayor Rohrer said, but in 2019, former Mayor Dan Rohrer specifically initiated this ordinance change to ensure that only the year in which the application was filed could be granted. This was due to the money from previous year's budgets already being distributed, making 100% of that exemption being paid by the borough only. Dora will be able to provide fiscal impact information with real numbers shortly. D1 limits the application only to the year for which the exemption is sought. KIBC 3.35030D continues on to say, the Borough Assembly for good cause shown may waive the claimant's failure to make timely application for the exemption for that year, and if the assembly finds good cause for failure to make timely filing, the borough assembler shall accept the borough assessor shall accept the application as if timely filed. So D2 lets the public know that there is a remedy for them to late file. What I believe the Assembly is looking for is to no longer have this application be annual. Even if you go to a one-and-done application method, you'll still need a deadline for new applicants because of the budget, and that means you'll still have to do good cause hearings for late applicants. While it is true that Kodiak is the only borough that does ask for an annual application, other boroughs such as Anchorage and Matsu, after realizing how much money they were losing, which at a 2020 AML meeting in Anchorage announced it was an estimated $760 million loss that was given out in exemptions for people that applied as one and done, that had either moved without selling the house, died, let their kids stay there, rented out their homes, whatever the case may be. Assessing had no idea that that this was no longer the primary resident of a senior citizen or disabled veteran, and the people that were living in the home were enjoying an exemption even though they were not senior or disabled. Since then, Anchorage has a staff of 4 people to monitor senior and disabled veteran exemptions, and Matsu has a staff of currently 3 and is seeking a 4th. Most other boroughs have staff of 2 at the very least and are trying to hire more. If the Assembly is considering making the applications one and done, the KIB Assessor's Office would request another full-time appraiser tech position, which would cost the borough anywhere between $103,000 to $109,000 a year in the first year, depending on experience, which we all know will continually rise, very least annually, so that I could pull one of my appraisers out of the field to handle all exemptions, including senior citizens and disabled veterans, leaving open that we would have to evaluate after that first year if we needed more staff. Assessing would also be instituting some type of new procedure for a percentage of the senior and disabled veteran applications that we would go to their properties to verify the owner is in the home and that they are there for the required number of days. I'd like to provide with you some numbers from the 2023 application mail-out. I've provided an Excel spreadsheet for you that will correspond with my exemption numbers to tax dollar amounts. Since we have no idea the exact mill rate that would be used to calculate this, we gave an example of the lowest mill rate and the highest mill rate. So it wouldn't be any less than the lowest or any more than the higher one. We mailed out a total of 948 applications, 843 seniors, and 105 disabled veterans. Of that 948, 822 applications were received back. That shows to us that there were 126 applications that were not returned, and in a one-and-done situation, the borough would still have to pay for. Of those 822 applications, 700 seniors and 85 disabled veteran applications were approved as of the certified rule in May.
Would you repeat that distinction between the seniors and the
700 seniors
700.
and 85 disabled vets.
Thank you.
We received 22 seniors and 3 disabled vet applications that were denied for being late. Of the 25 applicants that were notified of denial and given the opportunity to come before the Assembly for a good cause hearing, 9 chose to do so. The Assembly granted 5 of those applications. Going back to the original 822 applicants that timely filed, 37 applications were not included in the certified roll due to either a PFD or some other issue. 32, as reported in the manager's report, have been approved as of today, and their tax statements rebilled, and we are awaiting information from 5 applicants, from either the applicants themselves or from the PFD. They will have until December 31st to supply that information. Since disabled veterans applications have different requirements for when a veteran is 50% or more disabled but not considered permanently disabled, assessing would need to come up with an additional, or they still apply or provide assessing with additional paperwork. This was easily given by the veteran at the time that they returned the annual application. Assessing will need to figure out a way to reach out to those disabled veterans for the required documentation that we'd still need to get. The annual application isn't wrong, it's just different. It's different because we are Kodiak. We are not Anchorage or Matsu or Kenai. We are not on the mainland. We have remote small villages and processing plants that enable employees to be gone for long periods of time in the slow months. Many of our seniors and disabled veterans travel off island for long periods of time, sometimes moving off island but not selling their home. Since its conception, KIB has mandated that applications be filed annually. KIB has been taken to court for the annual exemption application method. The court upheld our method of application and only found that KIB was lacking in who made the final decision for good cause determinations, part of the reason that D1 and D2 were added to the code, and why the Assembly does the good cause hearings. We could work on different ways to address the annual application issue, but I don't think that removing D1 and D2 are the right way to do it. If you want to give me the direction and continue this discussion, I could certainly work on coming back to you with options. The bottom line for me is that if the state reimbursed KIB for its exemption costs, I'd be all over Kodiak being a one-and-done exemption borough and not checking applications. But the state does not reimburse, and it is our duty, yours and mine, to not only protect the seniors and disabled veterans in Kodiak, but also to protect the rest of Kodiak's taxpayers and not unnecessarily burden them with exemptions that really shouldn't be given out. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan's got his hand up first, so I'm going to call on him. Ryan?
Yeah, Seema, thank you very much for that presentation. That's very informative, and I appreciate the work that you put into that. I'll just tell you where my position is on this. I'd like to see both the senior exemption and the VA disabled veteran exemption move to a 3-year period following the open enrollment period for the Alaska Permanent Fund, January 1st to March 31st. I'd like to see that senior exemption and the disabled veteran is actually verified by the every 3-year physical inspection when assessing is due in their on-site visit. And then every 3 years, ask a disabled veteran to resubmit their current VA benefit letter for those that are temporarily disabled and have an awardee amount greater than 50%. That is the premise of the changes that I'd like to see. I'm not asking for anything other than a simplification in process. And I think that Seema, your presentation with even further supports a 3-year process based upon your explanation for the community that we're in and the traveling schedules and elongated periods of time that they're away from Kodiak. I think that further supports the position that I'm requesting here. Yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions of staff? James, you were first, then Jeff.
That number you quoted for the extra person of 100,000 plus, is that fully loaded or is that base?
Sorry, that's their fully loaded, but only for a year.
Starting.
So
Thank you.
that is the beginning salary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Well, having been through part of the reason why the determination is left with the Assembly on appeals, and I understand the look-back piece, I understand what that impact would be. I do think good cause needs to be there. I'm not really interested in changing this ordinance really at all. My concern with a multi-year approach is, I think that, like, if they did the PFD every 3 years, I tell you I wouldn't be getting a PFD, right? So every year when I know it's time to file, I have a ritual in place, because otherwise I would forget to do it. And so I think that you'd have more individuals potentially forgetting to file every 3 years. We'd send that letter out as a notice to them, or every 4 years, or whatever cycle you wanted to put it on. And I think you'd be having the same discussion down the road that you had folks that forgot for whatever reason because they hadn't done it on an annual basis. But I would be interested, Seema, if you have research on that or want to explore that further to say what that might look like. I'd be interested in hearing that, but for myself, I'm comfortable with where it's at right now.
Scott?
I'm comfortable where it's at right now, too. I worry that if we extended it to 3 years, it'd just cause more problems in the long run. Thank you.
Larry?
I'm very supportive of moving to a multi-year. Currently we process 948 exemptions that you review and you have an employee read, process, and look at right now.
822.
So we mail out the 948, but we only look at those that we receive, so we only looked at 820.
Okay, still a lot of exemptions that somebody has to review and make a decision on.
And it is office-wide at this point.
Pardon?
We don't have just one person that's doing it because of the way that it comes in. They come in so staggered that
Sure.
we're able to let.
It seems to me that if you did a 3-year review, you would only have to review, 280 applications every year to verify that they're still correct. And if you find out during that process that they're not truthful, like I read a number of ordinances in different cities in Alaska, and they hold people accountable if they lie. They'll go after that money if they do that. And it seems if we had a 3-year, you reduce the number that you have to look at. And there's a certain amount of trust, and I have to believe that the system sort of is based on the fact that people are dishonest. And again, that's probably true in some case, but if I generally believe that most people are honestly submitting applications, then the amount of workload, in fact, this might, if you did a 3-year, it might reduce the workload that you have to do because people only have to turn in a formal application every year and they have a responsibility when they sign on the line that if there are changes, they're responsible to report that because if you find out they haven't done that. I certainly agree that we don't want to go back and approve people in the past. I think, that was during the public comment, that made a lot of sense. But I do believe that we're talking about seniors. And if you have the opportunity to work with seniors sometimes, or you have them in your family, or you're one of them, they don't remember everything. And they don't always have somebody to do that for them. And they do forget. So some of these rules are so black and white, and we've already decided by vote of the assembly that forgetting, Dan probably has a wife that will tell him to do it. But some people don't have that opportunity, and we don't grant that. And seniors are our most fragile, sometimes living on Social Security only or very small incomes. And I believe that, believing most are honest, that we can go to a 3-year and actually save money by doing it. And we build it on the honesty of our people.
Anything else, Larry? Jared?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have a few questions. By the way, this is all really helpful. Thank you, Seema. The number of title holders who didn't file, that was 126.
Correct.
So that comes out to from the low end to the high end. On the low end, that's about $193,000. On the high end, about $264,000. That if we did a one and done, that's money that we would not have seen.
Potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
That's kind of that range. Seeing
Right, it's the
what we
difference
have here.
between the 822
Exactly.
and the 9.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's helpful to see. So if we are considering a one and done, that's kind of, that range of impact there. To what extent have you thought about, there are some communities that have an occupancy requirement. Matsu, for instance, you have to reside in your house at least 180, like half the year,
85,
right?
185 days.
Same.
Have we never had anything like
We
that?
do.
We
That
do.
is
We do?
on our.
Oh, okay.
So let me give you
Go
an
ahead,
example of what happened just this week. So I had somebody from a village call and ask about their taxes that were in arrears. And literally, it was like, well, why didn't you pay them? And she said, well, I didn't pay him because I'm not in the village when these bills come out. So I just keep forgetting. I was like, well, where are you? Let's just change your address. And she was like, well, my boyfriend lives in Hawaii. And I'm like, hey, if I had to live in your village or in Hawaii, I'd choose Hawaii too. How long are you there? And she was like, probably 70% of the time. She goes, but on your books, it says that you guys could be going back and discussing whether I would be okay to go backwards. So I'm 68, I could go back the 3 years that I'm delinquent. And I was like, well, I don't think it would work for you because I don't think we're grandfathering it backwards. And they were already in foreclosure, so it was a little bit different. I said, but, you're still not going to qualify because you're not at your house 185 days. And she literally told me, but you're going to one and done and you'll never know. And she's right. There is no way. So if we went to a 3-year, that doesn't mean that we still would not have to check all of those 948. And that's, we jumped from, I want to say 635 to 948 from 22 to 23. We are an area of people that are getting older. So I expect to be well over 1,000 for 2024. I think we already have 48 applications, and we're not done because people come in on their birthdays and they file for the next year. So we'd still end up having to check all of them. We'd still be checking the PFD. It's not going to say that we're not going to check those for 3 years. We're still going to do it. If we move the application period to March 1st to March 31st, that means that is less time for my staff to check on these. And instead of having 837 people that we are carrying forward because they applied by mail maybe for the PFD and so they're undetermined, that number is just going to be bigger. So you're going to carry something in your budget. You're going to be like, oh, so now instead of just carrying 37, we're carrying 152. And you're going to have to take that number into consideration when you're doing the budget every year because we're going to end up paying those if they become eligible as it goes. If they prove up or if, something happens that the PFD says, oh yeah, now you're eligible. And that was the reason that we were holding it. Additionally, we right now literally have to check signatures because there are people that we know are out of town and yet their application comes back. And so just like the PFD has told us that they have children that claim their PFDs or write up their PFDs, even though they might be in another country or they're on vacation during that January to March period, then their kids are going online and filing for them. So it says that they're in town. So their PFD will say that they're eligible. We're literally going to have to do some kind of door hanger thing or something to see that these people are really, really here. But right now, when we get that application, I can look at that signature and say, oh, yep, that's the same signature that I got from this person, or it's a different signature, and I can write a letter at that time saying, I'm denying you, and I'm not denying you because you filed late. I'm denying you because you've literally committed fraud. Mm-hmm. So those things are not going to stop for my office. We'll ramp it up even more. And I will come back, even on a 3-year, asking for another person in that office because it is going to be that much more for us to do.
Yeah, I was just talking to Pat Branson and the Elder Services Committee this week, and the number of senior citizens in Kodiak has doubled since 2010. I mean, at some point, we're going to reach critical mass of boomers, right? And then the number's going to start going down.
Right.
At some point.
Also,
but-
just one last thing, when somebody forgets to file and they come in for these good cause hearings and stuff like that, I could almost guarantee you, they are not going to forget again. We don't have the same applicants that forgot to file last year that didn't file this year. It's not those 11 that came last year, or the 15 that came the year before, or the 9 that come this year. They will file, they will remember. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, Seema, I'd asked you to look into something in terms of exploring it, but as I sat up here and was thinking about this, I don't want you to spend your time doing that on my behalf at my request, because I think if we considered any multi-year filing, what that means is that you're going to have to review 948 exemptions this year that, let's say they're all eligible and they're on a 3-year cycle. And next year you get 76 more, they're on a 3-year cycle. The year after that, 189 that are on a 3-year cycle. And then the 900 come due, plus the new ones that come that next year. I see this being this revolving door that will never be something that's manageable.
But we won't stop that 948. All it's going to be is 948 plus the 76 new, plus the 189 new. Because even though they're not applying on that 3-year cycle, we're still going to check it.
Yeah, well, I don't need you to look up what I'd asked you to maybe explore. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing that I'd like to say is I do not support the 3-year process. I support every year, just like the PFD. Is the PFD perfect? No, it's not. I am in favor of changing it to the March 31st date, and the reason is it's something that's in people's heads. They know they got to file. There's 2 things, March 31st and April 15th. Those are 2 dates. Either you correlate with those or you're asking for trouble. And I understand the problems with the January 15th. I had probably each year anywhere from 6 to 8 people that asked me, do you think it's worth applying for an exception? And I said, not a chance in hell. You're not going to get it because you forgot. The best thing is, it cost you $2,000 this year. You won't make that mistake again on there. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. But I am in favor of tying it to another date. And the March 31st date is the one that comes to my mind that would work. I realize it creates some issues, but it is no fun up here going through the exceptions, as we have seen on here. So if we can make it
I mean,
a
just
little
be
bit
aware
easier.
that it's going to be, you're still going to get
I
them.
understand.
Yeah.
I understand. But people can file, they don't have to wait till the end. The problem is, you get it and hopefully they'll file. But it's giving them a little bit, it's tying it to something else. Because the January 15th typically doesn't trigger anything in anybody's mind. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seema, would you review with us what that does to your certified roll calculation, when that date is, if we would shove back to March 31st and when certified roll is due?
Okay, so if we do that, let's say there's 822 people that apply. Of those 822, this year we had 37 people that had the risk of us having to rebill them and granting them their taxes. When you guys do the budget, then now if we had 150 people, we are going to have to literally make sure that we keep that money away from the school district, away from the service districts, away from everybody, so that the borough themselves are not the only ones paying that money. And you'll have a dollar amount. I can tell you when we go through budgets and say, this is how many people it is that actually, I have applications in my hand, but are undetermined or still have to prove to us that they have been here. So it's not a good cause determination. It is a determination that we do within the office to make sure that they're providing the requirements that we need. So instead of the 37 people, I think, which was, sorry, I know that number is on here, anywhere between 56,000 and 77,000, we could be closer to, 150 or $300,000 that you guys, when you do the budget, are going to have to make sure has been left so that we can take that exemption money out.
And I understand that, and I can live with that, because basically, you're looking at $15 million that you're collecting on the mill rate.
Okay, you said that in front of the finance director. I'm going to make her make a little.
Yeah, but that's 150,000 is 1% of what we collect each year. I understand that it creates some issues, but I think it's worth it in lieu of the problems that I hear from people, that the January 15th slips by their mind because nothing else. It doesn't mean anything else to them other than their senior exemption. So what most of them try and do is when they get it, try and fill it out now to send it in, is what I'm hearing on there. So
And
it's
that's
just,
what we tell them. We literally
Yeah.
tell them, you get it in the mail, bring it down to us right now.
yeah.
Because, I mean, like, as soon as you got it, fill it out and bring it down so that you are insured.
And,
Don't
and
wait
that
till the
will,
deadline.
and that will help reduce that number that you're looking at the PFD. But you still, in order to get the information from the PFD, their deadline is March 31st. So you're still going to wait, and it's not going to be conclusive until after that date anyway.
Right, but the PFD right now, because it was only 37 that were undetermined, so that means that those 735, the PFD, by the certified roll, had already determined them as
Right,
eligible.
had received them. So
Yep.
some of that's still going to happen.
Yep.
So I don't think it's necessarily going to be that bad. Ryan, you had your hand up a bit ago, and I don't see it now. Do you have something you want to ask?
Well, I was just going to challenge this critical mass theory on an exponential increase year over year, and how that burden would look as an increased burden to staff, yet we're not accounting for attrition. We're not accounting for those that move out of town, and we're definitely not freeing up more property. So we have a finite amount of housing here. I think that there's a flaw with the calculations that we are presenting, and the math just doesn't add up to me. I still am extremely supportive of a 3-year process, and I understand that you guys are not, but I just want it very well known that I think that this process should be a 3-year process on a revolving period, verified on site by the assessing department, and failure to verify on site is a purpose for revocation of the of this benefit. So it puts assessing right there, communicating with somebody, they're visually seeing somebody. If there's no contact, the exemption is not granted for that period, and that would then increase the number of the tax basis that we're receiving. So I think, again, the purpose of my hand up is challenging this critical mass theory. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Larry, you had your hand up, and then Amy.
Just a couple of things. Is there any thought to, and by the way, I appreciate your presentation and your knowledge base, and I really do. It really helps me think. Many municipalities are using online registration. Is there any reason we're not, or do we allow that?
We don't, and part of the reason is that we can't tell if they're in town, if they do online. So the PFD actually does look at your location, and that's some of the reason that they deny or undetermine somebody, because somebody's filling it out in Washington or whatever.
Yeah, and
But we don't put the applications out there, so we mail as your reminder. We don't put the applications online because of the confidential issues with them.
Okay, I'm imagining that other municipalities have solved that problem, but I don't know for sure. But I certainly understand the problem that you mentioned.
We do accept the applications after they've filled them out online. So sorry if I made you misunderstood your question. We do accept them by fax where we can see that they have faxed it from a number that is here. And contrary to everybody's beliefs, people do have faxes.
Yes.
Also, how do we send out a letter to seniors that did it before, or we send it to everybody in town that owns property? How do we do that?
So we have a list of the people in a program, and that creates an application, a pre-printed application. It gets sent with a pre-printed letter that says, make sure that you don't risk losing your exemption, timely file. Here is all of your information. Please check the boxes that you need to. Make sure that your phone number is right. You're still at this address, and then sign it. And that's what they mail back to us or bring it in. We ask them to bring it in.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of that. Have we thought of, I know Amy suggested a postcard, for assessment visits, and that worked out very well, and the letter you sent is much more than a postcard. But I'm wondering if you've ever thought of attaching this advertisement to everybody's tax bill.
We do.
So
We do that also. There is in your tax bill, there's one side that says information about finance, and there's the other side is, hey, did you turn 65? Are you a disabled vet, in big red letters, and it tells you to come in and contact us and fill out your exemption application.
my wife takes care of that kind of stuff, so.
Right.
You missed it.
Yeah, or I wouldn't have the exemption.
So during the exemption period right now, so between November 15th and January 15th, we advertise on the radio, we put it in the paper, we put it on Facebook to try and make sure that people are seeing every way that they possibly can that their application has been put in there. We let them come in. It's not even that they have to bring their application. If they go, hey, it's November 15th, they can feel free to come in that day and fill out the application with us.
We have a certain number, because your computer will tell you who's applied and who has not. Correct. So, say a month before they're due, would somebody be able to call them and say, we haven't received your application, you normally apply, is there some reason that you have not? Because I would be willing to do that, and.
So we do put phone numbers on there, but people change their phone numbers but I mean, it's absolutely, I'll be requesting that person.
Well,
But I'm willing to do anything that, you think would be helpful.
Well, maybe the senior center would do it. The trick here is getting information, because most of the applications are the ones that came before us. There were reasons they did that, and sometimes they forget. I understand just from listening to the assembly that it doesn't sound like we're going to do anything to address the momentum of past progress. I support 3 years. I really don't think if we do it right, Jeff's comments that it would flood 1 year, you could easily prorate it to different years to take care of that. That's done all the time. But given that it doesn't sound like there's support for change, I think the next step is to continue doing what you're already doing a lot of, and that's communicating. And the only thing I would say is when you get down to that point a month before, that somebody actually call these people and say, look, because not everybody reads everything.
Right.
In the normal modes of communication. Some people don't get on the internet, they don't get the newspaper, and they don't even get their mail because somebody gets it, so.
Right. We also do not drop people off of so if you have to not apply for 3 years in a row before we drop you off of that mailing list.
Thank you.
Amy, you had a comment?
I've decided to pick my battle, so I'm going to hold that comment
Okay.
back. Thank you.
Okay. Larry, if you're going to do that for the senior exemption, I want to see it done for the October 15th deadline on property taxes, because a lot of these seniors do not have a mortgage that is paid through. And then or if they do the two-payment thing and go to November. So no, I'm not in favor of calling on those things unless you're going to do that across the board on everything for everyone. Thank you.
Well, I disagree with you, but that's okay. It won't be the first or the last.
Yep. So I'm not seeing the votes there for the 3-year process, and I'm not sure about changing the date to possibly a March 31st. So I would just ask, some people commented on, some didn't, what thoughts were on changing from the January 15th to possibly a March 31st. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you. I'm fine leaving it as it is.
Okay. Jared?
I kind of ambivalent. I don't know if it would matter if we change the date, but maybe we can talk about it some more. But
Future date.
Future date, maybe.
James?
You can't poll the assembly during a work session.
Well, I'm just trying to guess.
And if we're gonna stay on these topics for as long as we're taking, we're
Oh,
gonna
I
be
know.
here until midnight.
No, we cut off at 10.
Well, we better
you-
hurry up then.
10 o'clock's the cutoff.
I
So,
have one more really quick question.
okay, go ahead.
One really quick question. So you are going to be requesting for an assessment tech staff member this coming year?
If you change it in any way, or you go to the March 31st, I probably will.
Okay, all right.
Especially if you go to the 3 years, I still will.
Okay.
Scott?
I don't think that changing the date is going to make a big difference.
Okay. Well, that takes care of it.
You didn't ask me.
I didn't have to.
I support not changing it because we heard from our finance director.
He wanted to be
that
pulled.
that
I
would not
can't
be
help it.
a good thing, so.
Thanks, Larry. So, moving on. Next one is discussion of local assistance and tribal consistency funds. This is the LATCF grant funds to the Alaska Municipal League, Alaska Public Land Fellowship. That's only part of it. The other thing is NACO has started with NACO requesting money from all the recipients. The tune of 1% was what the original ask was. And then the Alaska Municipal League got on there and said that they'd like some. And as you saw in your packet on pages 13 through 34, there was a form that had it where you could even do less than or split it or all to one or even nothing on there. I reached out to NACO, which is National Association of Counties, who was instrumental in getting this money designated to counties. And one of the only restriction on the funds is that you cannot use it for lobbying. And in the letter I had received back here from it was Jonathan Shuffield, Legislative Director for Public Lands with NACO. He acknowledges that there is the propensity for this to be classified as lobbying, even though they're putting it into a trust. So to make sure there's an arm's length distance, recommends that any money be out of general fund and not out of the proceeds from this. And that would hold true whether it's Alaska Municipal League or NACO. And at this point, we've already done our budget, and there isn't room to do that. But I did ask basically both of them, and which is Alaska Municipal League and NACO, it doesn't have to be done now. They understand the budgeting process, and if we choose, we can choose to do this later. My thought is to get more information. Basically, Alaska Municipal League is putting this together kind of on the fly as they go and determine what it'll be. But with our budget being already worked up, I think it's going to be something that will, basically, I suggest we bring this back as part of the budgeting process and see what information we get from both entities in that process. NACO said they have pledges to the tune of 4.7 million towards a goal of 15 million on there is what they've received. Some people are splitting it up because it's in 2 trenches, one each year. So there's a lot of different things out there, and it's and at this point, nobody from Alaska, it appeared, had pledged anything yet to either one, from what I'm seeing. So I would suggest we bring this back as part of the budgeting process. So open it for discussion on that premise. Any discussion? Larry, didn't see your hand.
Just because I raised my glasses.
Oh, I missed it.
I don't support, giving $49,000 to the National Organization for a Foundation. It's money that we can spend on anything except lobbying. We can use it to fill deficits, to reduce spending, to hire staff, and what you get back for that kind of thing is so diluted, by the time, it's just money that disappears. And I'm very supportive of the Alaska Municipal League and their lobbying effort and what they do, and I'm glad we're a member. But giving money to the national organization when they see all this money now wants a part of it. And we just don't have the money in our town to do that kind of thing. I don't think we'll ever see any result directly related to our donation of funds. So I would say that we don't have to do anything to say no, do we?
Okay. No,
We just-
we just
okay.
don't contribute. Ryan, I see your hand up.
I had done my own research because I wasn't familiar with these, and I agree with your assessment on AML and lobbying, and furthermore, what the definition of lobbying is in private interest groups. And so I appreciate that diligence on your part, and I also agree with Assemblymember Ledoux that I'm not in favor of funding any portion of that to NACO as well. So I see that as, again, to mirror his comments, I see that as a very diluted investment as well. So thank you.
Further comments? The only other thing I haven't said is NACO is currently working on trying to get a doubling of the PILT money, which would affect western states more than eastern states that have, no, when I say western part of the United States, kind of west of the Mississippi on there. Which would mean possibly an additional $1 million a year for us because of all the refuge property on there. So that's part of why I say they are doing things for us, and we'll see how they make out on that too. So that's all I have, and so we'll move on, which puts us into the packet review. First thing is awards and presentations. There's proclamation declaring September 18th through the 22nd Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. Then under public hearings, the first thing is ordinance number 2023-19, amending Kodiak Island Borough Code Section 17.175.050, off-street parking location. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You will see our ex-interim director up here because she started this and she's going to see it through and not throw the new director into the hot seat quite so quickly. So Seema, take it away.
This is the third time that you guys have seen this. This is about the off-street parking. It's a code cleanup just to ensure that the borough makes, that there's no kind of, for lack of a better word, loophole, that everybody has to be zoning compliant and they have to do it within a lease or a warranty deed, some kind of recorded document.
Thank you. And I think this is a great idea. Any questions on it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is getting into contracts. Contract number FY 2022-26C, change order number 3, authorization for the North Star siding and window project with Wolverine Supply. Amy, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave's here tonight to update us on this one.
Basically, this is, first of all, good evening. First of all, this is basically housekeeping. There's no way that this company is going to achieve the completion goal. The actual physical work will likely be done by the due date. However, till you get all of the paperwork into the state of Alaska, DOL, get all the clearances done, we're just extending this, requesting extending it into October. They are substantially complete, so I'm very comfortable with this. That's why we're suggesting it.
Okay, which is the, extending it to October 27th.
That is correct.
Okay. Any questions on there? Thank you. Then the second one is contract number FY 2023-47A, change order number 1, authorizing the Peterson Elementary roof replacement project with Friend Contractors. Oh, I'm sorry. Ryan, I see your hand. Was that on the last?
Yeah, yes, it was.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we were discussing the change order for Wolverine. I actually have two questions on this. The first question is, how did we get change order number 2 dated 9/13/2022 before we got change order 1 dated 8/25/2023?
I have no idea. I'll have to look into it.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll check back for next week on there. Anything else on it, Ryan?
No, that's
Okay.
it. Thanks.
Okay, then I'll go on to the second one, which is the change order number 1, authorizing the Peterson Elementary roof replacement project with Friend Contractors. Amy?
This is our first change order for this contract, so hopefully the dates are good. Dave?
Yes, this is simply extending the due date from September, final completion date of September 21, 2023 to September 20, 2024. We're also going to prohibit the starting to tear the roofing apart until close to or at the end of the school year next year.
Good idea.
Jeff?
The only question I have with the completion date of September 20th, 2024, is that in time for the use of the ARPA funds that are allocated to pay for this project?
Majority of those funds will be expended mostly when we get bills for materials. I believe that the way the system is going to work, we'll be able to expend the majority of the funds and likely have the ability to ask for an extension. It's the momentum of actually spending the dollars that needs to be done. This lack of, if there was nothing done, then we would be having a different conversation at that time.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, we'll go on to the next one, contract number 3, FY 2024-8, professional service agreement with Water Technology Incorporated for Kodiak High School pool statement of work and proposal package preparation based on the prepared evaluation. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dave's going to give the report on this, but it's my feeling that we should postpone that from next week. We haven't had significant conversations with that contractor They are interested in doing that scope of work, but because we have assembly interest in trying to get that work done a different way, I think that there's some complications in there, but let Dave go in the details.
Okay.
I believe that was actually a good explanation with the vacations for the two gentlemen that I was speaking with, and also my involvement with the healthcare week that was going on. I did not have a chance to be able to have substantive conversation. They are interested. They are willing to discuss the contract changes that Mr. Sherritt had brought up, and I would subsequently like to have some conversations with Mr. Sherritt with some of the materials that were provided the last time we brought this up. There was no intention to discuss contract at that time. We were simply looking at trying to see if we wanted to pursue moving forward with these folks and having conversations. So I believe, I would request respectfully that we postpone this until we can have all those conversations.
Do we want to postpone it or remove it from the agenda? Because I'm not sure if you're going to be able to bring it back immediately.
I'm very comfortable with either way. Removing makes the most sense for right now until we can have those
It does for
conversations.
me, too. Ryan?
Yeah, I just want a point of clarification. So am I to understand that you put a contract in an agenda packet, but you didn't want to discuss the agenda packet items? Am I missing something here? Because if you're going to put something in the agenda under a contract, I'm going to read it and I'm going to have questions. Is that not the expectation at this point?
Well, I guess it is at this point. Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'm going to say remove it from the agenda for next week on there. Okay, so that one's removed from the agenda for next week. The next contract is number 2024-12, authorized purchase of Micro C from Environmental Operating Solutions. Amy, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Dave's update as well.
Sorry, juggling contracts here.
Yeah.
Effectively, this is a request for the expenditure of $46,240. Basically, Micro C is the food for the bugs at the leachate treatment plant. Because we have no carbon source, i.e. a normal wastewater treatment plant, this is the glycol-based solution that feeds the bugs that eat the components of the leachate.
When's the last time we?
I believe it's 2 years or more ago. I will not guarantee that it's going to be that long because of our process changes that we're going to be encountering. But hopefully what these process changes will do is actually allow the material to work better in the process by removing the volatiles.
Okay, and so this is, they're seeing DAP shipped to destination. I'm used to FOB on there. So I take it this is Kodiak, FOB Kodiak.
It is Kodiak.
Okay. Ryan, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So that was one of my points is they're using Incoterms 2020. DAP is delivered at place. So this is unloaded there basically at the Baylor facility. My questions stem from this is a glycol-based product, so I'd like to know what the impacts of having 4,000 gallons do to our facility SPCC and what that plays into our role into our HAZCOM program for the landfill. This is a quantity that has a particular interest from a regulatory position. So if you can get me some information on that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
So this is reported to the DEC as required. The reports are indeed filed. This is air padded, it is not pumped, so it's air padded out, and it is considered not to be a caustic or hazardous material as we have discussed with the DEC in the past. If you would specifically provide me with a request of what you're looking for, we can work on that.
Thank you.
Question I have is what is air padded?
You take an air compressor and you hook it up to the large cylindrical tank and you pump air in it, and that increased pressure within the tank is what transfers from tank to
Okay.
tank, rather than using a mechanical pumping system.
And pumping it through the pump.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Next item is resolutions. Resolution number FY 2024-5, resolution of the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly appointing a member to the joint seat on the Kodiak Fisheries Development Association's Board of Directors. Staff report, Amy, or is that Lena? Lena.
So the city of Kodiak already approved this resolution, so it's just going to the assembly for just housekeeping. We can't change anything. It's already been passed on their side, so it's just reappointing
Go ahead.
it's just appointing members to the Fisheries Development Association.
And for the public, the members' names.
I don't have the report in front of me, so I apologize for that.
James? Oh, I thought you had a comment on there. Well, that's a good comment. I was thinking I read somewhere
It's on line 32, Mr. Mayor.
on line 32. Okay, Linda Freed and Tyler Schmiel. Now it's a reappointment. They're already on the board, so it's not anybody new. I had some, pardon me? Yeah, I had some people commenting on that, and I said it was my understanding they were already on the board. So, go from there.
I have a question.
Scott, go ahead.
Do we know how long this appointment is for? I mean, it seems like we just did this a while ago for Linda Freed and for Schmiel.
I think it's been 3 years.
I think it has too. I wonder why it's so short. I mean, then maybe that's probably it.
Yeah, so, anyway, does that answer your question? Anybody else
Yep.
have any questions or comments? Okay, moving on, no ordinances for introduction. Cool. I'm gonna say, let's go back to my work session agenda. Okay, something's wrong there. Okay, no. Other items will be the approval of the October 3rd, 2023 regular municipal election officials. That'll be coming forward. Manager's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you, you'll have the manager's report for tonight. Dave and I met with Carl Hertz this morning about an emergent need for the sterilizer and steam generator over at the hospital. The prices we got this morning for this sterilizer is approximately $76,000, and a new steam generator is about $15,000. They have one steam generator that has been operating 2 different sterilizers. They are doomsdaying how they're going to continue surgeries if that sterilizer goes down. We do have a sterilizer study going. You'll see that we're expecting a 35% drawing at our next health and facilities meeting, but that is a ways down the road. And in December, that one of the sterilizers was down about 35% of the time. They did a new risk assessment this week and found out that that equipment needed to be replaced. They were no longer willing to operate like that. I included in there that the sterilizer was rebuilt 5 years ago and given a projected lifespan of 2 years. When we spoke with Carl this morning, we all kind of agreed that COVID probably drug that out a little bit longer, and that's probably why it's lasted this long, because we didn't do any elective surgeries or almost any surgeries during COVID unless we absolutely had to. If sterilization does fail at the hospital, they can't do any elective surgeries, orthopedic surgeries. And so we would like to put that on the agenda for you to consider on September 7th. It would be a contract with them or an understanding with them that we would reimburse them if they went and bought it. This is one of those things where in the past, we come like the hospital, emergency, 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 and we've been trying to make a policy with them where we are staying on top of their issues and try to understand what their needs are going to be. And I think we're doing a really good job with that, but I can't stop the emergencies in that process. So although we're trying to get a handle on what the future needs are, when this kind of stuff fails, it just fails. And so that's what they're asking for right now. So we'll have something for you to look at as soon as possible. We'll get it stuck in that agenda packet as soon as it's ready. Chief Putney invited the borough to attend the City of Kodiak's E911 system. We looked at 3 different products and got to see the behind-the-scenes information on how that system works. As you know, we pay into that through our tax that we add onto cell phones. So we have a designated amount that we pay in, but it was really interesting to learn about that system. I was contacted by Mark Hickey this week. He's asking when it would be good for him to come to town. I suggested the work session on October 26th, and that works with his schedule. The focus of that meeting will be our CIP list, and so we'll have that ready for discussion before then, after it comes through planning and zoning. We did get 2 villages to do input this year, which is more than usual, so hopefully we'll get more. We have been invited to the rural roundtables, or the forum on September 20th, so that's one of the things we'll talk about there, is to try to get more information in. We announced the vacancy for an IT director. We're planning on making a department out of IT in the future, so that job vacancy went out today. So we're excited about that. We got the band classification back from Gallagher, so we are ready to take that challenge on, and hopefully we'll be able to overlap with Paul before he leaves, but that's not guaranteed because we just don't know when his actual last day is going to be. Pacific Spaceport Complex, last time we met, I let you know that we did put in for that extension. That extension was granted for the comment period. Dave and Seymour were able to go out to the open house. They got to talk to Mr. Green and invite him to an assembly meeting. I saw him again at he's on the Chamber of Commerce board, so I got to see him again at that meeting and re-invited him then, and I sent him another email today and re-invited him. I gave him dates in September when we have work sessions, and we've yet to make actual contact back with him, but we are putting an effort in to invite him so that he can come in and update the assembly with what's going on out there. This week, we found out that there was a plan to bring contaminated materials from off-island into the Kodiak Island Borough landfill. I'm requesting, and I'll do this at an agenda setting, but I'm just putting it out there that this is happening, and we'll try to get it on an upcoming work session. My feeling is that the landfill is to serve our road system communities, and especially with contaminated materials, we don't even take them from villages, so I certainly don't want to see them come in from off-island. So when we get more details about that, I'd like to talk about that at a work session. I met with the Kodiak Island Borough School District Superintendent today, just to talk about what was going on with car luck and how the borough could better support the school district when it comes to grants and requests. I know a lot of boroughs will call in and send letters, and I have never been asked to do that, so I just want to see if it's appropriate for us to do that and how we can support them and show need. So I had a great meeting with Cindy as soon as the fire alarm was over today. Strategic plan, I missed one agenda setting, and strategic plan falls off the list. So I am going to ask at agenda setting again to get that put back on in a future agenda setting. And I have an example that I'll share with you from Sitka. It's kind of long, so for those of you that will accept the electronic copy, I'll send that to you, the link.
Print me one.
I know who I'm talking to. Just so you can review it and see what they did. They hired a contractor that came in, and they have it all, their roadmap laid out, how they did it, and I really like their end product, so that's something that I'd like you to look at and consider. So there's more information in there that you can absolutely read. In engineering and facilities, I think the biggest thing is our Volvo excavator failed. It's just throwing a bunch of error codes, and they're trying to get that figured out. So we had to rent a replacement from Brecken. So it's a good thing that we started buying that new one. We're going to need it sooner than we thought. We have the ADC inspection on site coming on September 12th. Alma from GSA came here. It was the first time she's actually been in the building here in Kodiak. She's always done like FaceTime or Zoom walkthroughs through the KFRC building. So she's actually here in person. We got a letter back that our deficiencies from 2022 were fixed, and we got a good inspection this year. So congratulations to staff, and they're doing a great job taking care of that building. We talked about the swimming pool, and I feel bad because I got the impression that Assembly Member Sherritt had prepared a lot of questions, and so I feel bad that that time went in. They're absolutely willing to work with us, but I think if you remember that Mr. Sherritt said, why can't we do the scope of work for ourselves, and why can't between the school district and Parks and Rec and the borough do that? And so we want to have more conversation with him about that and kind of try to find out where our subject matter experts are on this and if we can handle something like that. And my feeling on this is if our E&F director says that he's not the subject matter and we're looking to go outside, then we should strongly consider that. But I want to continue to have that conversation and bring in his new opinions too. So that's why we're delaying on that. We just want a better look at that process to see what we can do better. We talked about the Peterson delay till next summer. North Star, if you get a chance to drive by there, wow, does it look different. Those new windows and that new siding looks absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately now, because school's in session, they're only allowed to work on it after 3 p.m. and on the weekends, so they're going to have to go a little bit slower. They did a really good job, and it's really great to see. We are headed out to Carluck and Larson Bay to make repairs to those buildings. For Larson Bay, it's part of the transfer agreement. And for Carluck, we are working on their HVAC system. And so we have charters out for staff and contractors to go out. We were supposed to go out today, but weather did not cooperate as usual. So we are rescheduling as we can go. In finance, they're working on their final audit for 2023. In IT, they spent a lot of time today preparing us for a 4-day power outage and walking around and making sure everything was shut down. This year, they're publishing an online election precinct finder map, and our new, well, I guess he's not new anymore, but Travis has been working on our zoning maps and making sure that those lines, when you look at the land viewer, better match where those lines land in reality. And everyone, you'll see it in the IT listing, but everyone is prepping surplus equipment for disposal. We're going to have a surplus sale in the upcoming probably month or so. Dave's not here to confirm that, but it should be about a month. Megan is working on that as everyone is upgraded to standing desks. We have a lot of desks and a lot of the last version of our computers. SEMA, I think, did a good job going over the exemptions and where they're at for that. We're still working in Service District 1. Service District 1 is large, it has a lot of houses, and they're getting close to being done, so that's great. In community development, there's a planning and zoning meeting on September 13th. Parks and Rec tried again to meet on August 22nd, did not get a quorum, so the next meeting is scheduled for September 6th. And I mentioned earlier that we did get CIP requests in from Muzinki and Port Lions. And you guys got to meet Chris tonight, so happy to have the department directors fully staffed and look forward to working with him.
Thank you, Scott.
Madam Manager, did you discuss the contract with the GSA person?
You mean as far as that we're losing money on that contract? Yes. So we did meet with Alma before her coming here. The way that our numbers are, the spreadsheet that we were able to show her included all of our renters in that space, and she wanted to see specific, just the NOAA contract. And so our finance director is going to see what they can do to pull that out. They have about a 76% footprint in that building, so the majority of it does belong to them, but she wanted to be able to share NOAA-specific numbers.
Yeah, and stuff like electricity isn't based upon square
No,
footage.
we don't, right. And Alaska Fish and Game is actually a huge user of electricity just because of the chillers that are in there. So that's a little bit hard to distinguish, but our numbers don't look so good on that building, and so we're just trying to see what we can do to change those leases.
Did you get the feeling that she was amenable to
Yes,
those
I
kind of
did.
changes? Good. The other question I had was, in dealing with the spaceport complex people, Mr. Rohr mentioned that they're not following the plan that was developed by citizens and the former managers of the spaceport complex. Is that something we can bring up if he shows up? Or what do we do with that, you know?
I think it's definitely something we can bring up. I think the community invested 18 months to 2 years, depending on if you are on that. I was actually on that committee where they brought in because of tourism. And so when the community makes such a large investment and then it just kind of gets tossed to the side, I think the community feels frustrated. So I think it's definitely worth revisiting. And that plan, like all plans, should be getting updated along. So I think our move here would be to ask them to re-engage with the community and make sure that that stays updated.
I was also buttonholed by a person who handles some environmental things in town, and recently, and they wanted to know what the impact of the fuel dumped by the rocket back in several months ago out there. And apparently, there's been no report on the environmental impact of that. Have you got any further information about that?
Well, the only thing, I saw the video on Facebook that someone took and walked around that pile of dirt, and it looked like the windstorm had blown part of the cover off. But also, if you pay attention to that video, there's a really thick liner underneath. So I don't think that there's, and I'm not an environmental expert, and I do not play one on TV, but you can see that it's under there, and I know that they have a plan that they're following. I mean, we can certainly ask them about that, and we could talk to like the state level environmental folks. I'm not sure if they've been out to see it or not. So the debate that I've heard is, you know, how much of that burned up in the explosion versus how much hit the ground, and I don't know if we can actually calculate that, but it's obviously
Well, there's a discrepancy
legitimate
of several
concern.
thousand pounds, so.
Yeah, it's obviously a legitimate concern. I just don't know how we would figure that out. But that's, again, I think if we talk to the experts that work out there and run that facility, that'd be something that they could address.
It
when
might
they
also
came in.
be something that we want to bring up with DNR, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's several thousand yards of material that's being shipped off island on there too. In DEC, they're required to modify, and yes, you're right, I saw the film too, and basically there's the berm. It's built as a containment and bermed and lined, and it is true that the windstorm did catch that, and my understanding is the day after that film was done, it was recovered. So, but yeah. Any other comments of the managers? Comments, report? Okay. Next item is clerk's comments. Lena.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that we do have write-in packets available in the clerk's office. And you can also go online and fill one out. I did make those fillable and then just email it to the clerk's office. We are still preparing for elections. We are pretty much set on all of our totes and bags for the absentee locations that we were able to manage for the villages. We did get some people interested in helping us out, even though the villages will be getting their ballots by mail. We do try and get as many assistance for those people that may not receive a ballot in the mail or just simply don't want to use their ballot by mail. They feel more comfortable going in and having somebody help them. So we did manage to get assistance, and we will be doing election training the first and second week of so next week, September. Starting next week, we'll start doing ballot testing. We did receive our ballots yesterday, and the pamphlets should be getting mailed out next week. We are right on board and up to date on all of our election stuff, and we're just waiting to, for it to be here and done, I guess. And then there is going to be a candidate forum. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but there will be one. I believe. Okay. So there will be one on the 25th and 27th. And early voting will actually start before then, which will be interesting because early voting starts on September 18th. And it will go up until October 2nd, the day before the election. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's about all we have for the clerk's office currently.
When does the early voting start? again?
September 18th.
Thank you. All righty. Any other questions of the clerk's office? Seeing none, we'll move on to assembly member comments. James, let you go first.
No comments, thank you.
Jared,
Nope.
Jeff,
Nothing more.
Larry, Scott.
I understand a bunch of kids went out to the landfill and had a good time. I think that's a good idea to have our youth try to understand our dump or landfill, I'm sorry. I prefer dump.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be nice if we had sun again. Thank you.
We did for a little bit this afternoon on there. Ryan, any comments?
I'll just leave it with one word, and that word tonight is perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any further comments. Official travel calendar. It says December 6th through 8th AML annual conference. Lena, would you look into, there's normally, I want to say the
Newly elected.
newly elected and the mayors and managers portion, and I don't know what the dates are on those.
Yep, I can look into that. Do you want those
Thank
dates
you.
added in there as well?
Yeah,
It's separated.
yeah, because we have, especially we have an election of new people coming up, so I'd like to, it's on there and then everybody sees it, so.
Okay, yeah, we can add that.
So that's all I have, so work session adjourned. Thank you all.